Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden, and we are going to talk about identity. We're going to get right into this first tighten right off. And then after this, we're going to cover your self care cocoon. And by having a foundation of what the identity actually is a huge chunk of getting this. Basically, it's the foundation. So, today I have provided you with two additional videos, and they are basically there's part one, part two, and it basically covers narcissism. It's the narcissism mindset, and then it's BDSM and the authority paradigm that we're in today that's also related to narcissism. Narcissism is a trending mental illness, and it's one that is really steeped in our culture. And the reason why is because there is a massive amount of this codependent empath and narcissism exchange happening. I am a very firm believer that borderline personality disorder is 100% the mental illness that results from narcissistic abuse syndrome. I am solid on that. So, for me, in my opinion, and I'm going to say again a million times over, borderline personality disorder is the empath's affliction of narcissistic abuse syndrome. So you have the narcissist and you have borderline personality disorder. And when you have these two things working off of each other, it's extraordinary. So I'm not going to get any further into the diagnosis. I don't like focusing on that. What I really want to sit down and focus on instead is identity, because she is really at the core of this massive problem. On a side note, when it comes to pronouns, my identity is a she, so I refer to mine as a she. And you have whatever gender you want or non-gender that you want your identity to have. To be honest with you, it's something I'm going to be assigning, where you're going to have to decide if there is a gender to your identity or not, if your identity is male or female, because the more you personify your identity, the more you can relate to her, the more you can understand your relationship to her, and the more you can define her. And that's really going to be a hard chunk of what we are doing here. The same thing is going to be true for your subconscious mind and your fear system, and also your guilt system. Every one of them is going to need a gender, preferably a name, because we're going to take these things, these abstract concepts, and we're going to use the power of imagination to really hone down on their personas, because they do have a personality, each one of them. Your fear system has a personality. Your subconscious mind has a personality. And your identity has a personality. In addition to that, your guilt system has a personality. And in order to defeat these, take over, push back on some of them, turn them down, comfort them, it is so much easier if you can imagine them as actually being a person. So let's start with a name, if you wish, preferably, and a gender. For the record, mine is called Angel. I have been calling her Angel since I was 18 years old. Her name is Angel, and she's a she. And she's been with me for a very long time. Sometimes I call her Beth, just for consistency purposes, in my little play that I have happening in my brain, and I'll explain that later. But for now, mine is referred to as Angel. Mostly I've been calling her Identity, because when I started to do training and coaching, it was a lot easier to just refer to her as Identity. So now that's kind of her name. So identity has an agenda. I talked about this yesterday, and the agenda is defining the self. And I really don't, there's not a lot to elaborate with the identity. But basically, when we are exposed to trauma, identity is very much the one who's under attack. She's the one who's in charge of your authenticity. She is the embodiment of your authenticity. When you are authentic, original, being true to yourself, you are tuned into identity. I'm looking up the word authenticity now, because it's one of those words that I want to know exactly what it is. Authentic, real. Let's look up the word authentic definition and meaning. Amazes me. The term authentic is used either in the strong sense of being of strong origin. Let me try a little something different here. Authentic, definite. The quality of being authentic. Can we get a little bit more defined here? So yeah, it's origin. It's original. It's original, or it's original. So when we are talking about your identity, we are referring to your authentic, original self. This is the part of you, this is you that is 100% what you love and what defines you. What defines you. And the more you have defined as your identity, and the more you have defined of what you love, the more you have an expansive understanding of you. So the goal with identity is to define herself by collecting as much loves as she possibly can. And it's the collection of these loves that is the exploration of life. It is the pursuit of life. It's the adventure of finding new things to love, so you can add it to your collection, bring it back to your home, put it in your home and say, this is me, because this is exactly what identity requires. The more she has defined herself, really, it's the more she has defined of what she loves. People who are traumatized, who lose touch with themselves, forget what they love. The act of gratitude journaling is restoring the identity in the self, reminding the self what it is, what it loves, because that is what we lose. It's one of the very first things we lose when we are being abused. Abuse is defined as any outside source, malicious or not, that takes away from the identity to cause it harm. Anything that harms the identity. Anything. And over these 8 weeks, I'm going to be showing you exactly how much everything revolves and is the foundation of identity. So every time you have a perspective taken away from you, you're actually taking a piece of identity away. Every time your ethics are tampered with, you're taking a piece of identity away. Every time someone steps in and says, you're not supposed to do that, even though you want to do it, that's a piece of your identity taken away. And it gets to the point where your subconscious mind eventually learns that it's not safe to be authentic. So your subconscious mind then treats identity as a parasite in your own system, and it attacks her. And that's where she gets ripped apart. That's where she gets suppressed. That's where multiple personality disorder, she starts to break off into chunks. And then she gets separated. And every time identity is broken off into a piece, she takes a bit of her defense system with her. So that's a huge part of identity. Imagine if she were a Disney character, she's identity, and she has a sidekick, defense system. And defense system is very much her buddy. And her defense system is built up off of her communication system. We're going to totally go Little Mermaid here, and it's the voice. When I watch Little Mermaid, I see an entirely different show, because for me, it's, oh, they're taking the communication system. Look at that. She's completely defenseless because they've taken her ability to set boundaries. Every time I watch Little Mermaid, that is how I see it. It is absolutely an attack on her identity, as her voice is taken away from her and she's ripped from her identity, and she is plunged into this place where she's not capable of even communicating her own boundaries. So I love watching Little Mermaid. It's so much fun for me. But that is very, very much what composes identity. It is a combination of her voice. And basically, if you look at the voice as being actually a channel to the identity. So the more you talk, the more you're channeling your identity. Every time you open your mouth, you are channeling who you are. Now, it's not safe to talk. They've taken away your ability to literally channel your voice, to channel your identity. It's not safe to set down a boundary or defend yourself. They have stripped literally the entire defensive system away from you and your identity, so she can't even stand up and say, that makes me uncomfortable. And that's what happens to us when we're being abused. It takes away our ability to understand that it is safe to talk. It is safe to defend ourselves. It is safe to be ourselves. These are all lessons most of us are conditioned to not obey. And when you listen to the narcissist videos that I have available, part 1 and part 2, you can see how basically a woman is raised with the concept that she is supposed to be breeding. Like, her whole identity revolves around whether or not she has children, so that she fuses her entire identity to her children. And what you see in most cases, in that case, is that grooming to 5-year-old girls when we give them dolls and we teach them, hey, you have no identity unless you're a mother. So then you have 5 and 10-year-olds doing nothing but aspiring to become mothers because they don't have an identity without that defined purpose. That defined purpose is put on us by societal expectations. It has nothing to do with what we love and who we are. So as a result, you have a lot of women who do have children who don't want the children, or they have the children for the wrong reasons. And that opens up, well, the codependent narcissism that is the slave mind paradigm, which I explain in the other 2 videos. So identity is literally, don't think of it as people, because when you think about identity as who you love, you fall into a common trap of the projection, projecting your own misgivings, projecting your own what it is that you're missing. So you put it onto other people as a means to compensate from what you lack. So it is an easy, slippery slope. When I say to you, tell me what you love, and people jump in with, I love my children, I love my spouse. Slippery slope. No, because now you're looking into, are you projecting that need onto another because you define love by what you need and who needs you? Or do you really love these people? And you don't know if you love these people if you don't know who you are and what you do love. Why do we love people? Oh, I love this question. This is one of my favorite philosophical questions. We love people because people reflect who we are and our loves. It's like an encompassed mirror of everything we are. There's 2 kinds of people in the world. There's the people who reflect who we are, and that's healthy. Or there's people who we wish we could be, so we live vicariously through them because we lack imbalance, and that is toxic. And that is loving in fear, not loving in love, not being in love. You're actually in fear. So when we project our own desires onto other people, we seek to change them to correspond to the identity parts that we are missing because we are failing to identify our own self. We have to have other people that we can project upon to identify the self. And as a result, we seek out people who will supplement for us. Now, that's parasitic. You are a host. You are feeding off of, or you're providing shelter for a parasite, aka the narcissist, which is why we start seeking out narcissists, because we were programmed that we define love by being needed. Being needed in this case very much means being used, which is what I talk about in those 2 videos. So when you are putting together who you are, what your identity is built off of, and what you love, talking about who you love is absolutely dangerous in part of this exercise. What instead we want to talk about is what possessions, what objects, what activities we love. These are all things that go on to show us and define us. I am my music. I am my beautiful British china mugs. I am my gardens. I am artwork. I am my collection of Time magazines on the floor there. I am mindfulness, meditation, and psychology. I am books and I am education. I am coffee. I am my cats. Because everything that I love defines who and what I am. And the more definition I have, the more I know who I am. Now I have relativity because I'm now a defined constant. Oh, this is so philosophy and existentialism. By our definition of love, we become a defined constant. Now we have a piece of relativity that we can now compare ourselves to. You can't know where you are if you don't understand the ratio between point A and point B. That's relativity. You require a defined point to know who you are. Your identity is your defined point. So who are you? Most of us do not know. Most of us had that taken away from us. When we are born into the world, we are born with 2 things, our identity and our authority. Our identity is a beautiful package inside of us that we won't be able to determine until we step into the world of the buffet and we sample everything to figure out what we love and what we don't want. That's why we adventure, because we are seeking out self-definition. My favorite point in the book, The Hobbit, is when Bilbo, in the very beginning, when he runs out that door And he says, I'm going on an adventure. And he's uncertain in the book. No, I guess in the movie they did a good job portraying this, but in the book it was really embedded into you. Bilbo did not know who he was. He was fat. He was, his words, he was fat. He was misplaced. He was confused. He felt like an oddball that was misunderstood. He was just very, very unsure of himself. And then this asshole wizard comes to his door and says, you're going on an adventure because it'll be good for you. And he's dragged away by 13 dwarves. And or 12 doors. And then Bilbo gets to this point at the very end where he's confronting Smaug. This little hobbit is facing off with Smaug. And this dragon says, who are you? And the paragraph completely explodes into Bilbo saying, I am the adventurer. I am a thief. I am the barrel rider. And he lists off all of his beautiful names. A name is a summation of who we are. It is the defined self. A label is not a name. A label is a belief that somebody else is saying, this is what I think is you, and this is how you fit into my perspective. That's a label. Those don't feel good. Those are painful. A name is the defined self. It's why I have so many. It's because the more names you have, the more you have defined who you are. You get to define names as you go on your healing journey. You get to find your names. And the more names you find, like Bilbo Baggins, the more definition of the self you have found. So who are you? I am Queen of the Darkness. I am the philosopher. I am the mindset master. Every one of these names defines who I am. I am Goddess Imagination. I am the Goddess of Manifestation. I am Angela B. Chrysler. And I am the Fae Queen. I am all of these things. Some of the names were gifted to me. Some of the names were titles that other people deemed worthy of me. I've also been called a psychologist coach. Like, it all comes together. And every one of these is a proud name that defines the self. So what are all of your names? It's very important that you know who you are. Start with your names. And if you can't come up with your names, fantastic. That is now ground zero for you to start defining your names. So as we go through these 8 weeks, find your names. That's going to be one of the assignments, is finding yourself, defining who you are. And we define you by what you love. The love is found in creation, creativity, imagination. Our dreams define us. Those are the things that we're going to tap into. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delve into the self cocoon here in a minute, the self-care cocoon. I'm going to do another video for that, a separate video. But the goal here is finding that authenticity. And I had said earlier that when we're born, we are born with our identity and our authority. So what happens is our parents take our authority because we're infants, that's expected. But then it is our identity that is then taken away from us also, because every time our parents tell us, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't want that. Well, I have plans for you. You know what I dream for you? Dream for you. Do you know what I have planned for you? I don't know about you, but I grew up hearing those words. My parents had a lot of plans for me. And a lot of us are grown with people making plans for us. And that's very much that slave mind paradigm of, how can I use you? Because that is our mentality in the society, is people using people. That is exactly what we've been groomed to do. The purpose of this course is to ungroom that out of you, to take it out. You're not for anyone to use. You are not to use other people. Now, moralistically, there's a lot of us going, oh, I don't use other people. But are you someone who serves? Are you someone who seeks out a master because you have to be used by somebody, because you need to be needed? If you need to be needed, that is actually a need to be used. And in most cases, we are taught and conditioned to give and give and give until we are a withered husk and there is nothing left. That is parasitic. We are a host, that we seek out our own parasite too. And that's all because of that slave mind paradigm. It's discussed in the other videos. So this is the journey of taking back your identity, reviving it. The whole purpose of this course is to get your identity and your authority back, restored to you, and then all the bullshit, all the stuff that's been thrown onto you, we're going to cut away. We're going to transfer. We're going to turn down. We're going to adjust so that it's finally where it belongs. But at that core is your identity and your authority. And we're going to be literally just focusing on reviving that. So the exercises I give you are literally designed every day to groom your identity back into revival. It is imperative that you do this every day. I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye for now. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next video where I talk about the self-care cocoon. All right. Thank you. See you soon.